Unless the psychics I gave my feet picks to are wrong, the next standard format rotation will happen on March 21st in Pokemon TCG Live and April 4th in real life, removing all E-Block cards from the format. Basically, every card released in sets from 2021 will be removed from standard and only be playable in expanded. Those sets are Battle Styles, Chilling Reign, Evolving Skies, Celebrations, and Fusion Strike. To make things easy, look at the bottom left corner of your Pokemon cards to see which block they're from. For example, both Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX and Level Ball are from the 2021 E-Block, so they'll leave standard in March. Cards from 2022, meanwhile, have an F regulation mark in the bottom left, while cards from 2023 have a G regulation mark. And when Temporal Forces launches on March 21st alongside rotation, cards from our first 2024 set will have an H regulation mark. It can all be a little confusing, but essentially new Pokemon cards will remain standard legal for up to 3 years. I made this chart to help make things easier, but it'll probably end up confusing you more, like when I took off your mom's socks last night and she had another pair of socks underneath. As a reminder, cards are reprinted from time to time, resetting their legality. Judge, for example, was reprinted in Scarlet and Violet base set, meaning all versions of the card are going to be standard legal for a few more years. Another example is Countercatcher, which was last seen way back in the first year of Sun and Moon, which received a reprint in Paradox Rift. So just because a card leaves standard, it doesn't mean you should throw out all of your copies. You never know what the Pokemon Company is cooking up. Unless they're making bacon, then they're probably cooking up a Lechonk. With all that boring stuff out of the way, let's take a look at the top 10 E-Block cards rotating out of standard on March 21st, 2024 in PTCGL. Starting off with number 1, because I'm cooler than other YouTubers, we have Battle VIP Pass. While it's only playable on turn 1 and then becomes useless, being able to go and get any 2 basic Pokemon from your deck is insane. Far too many decks can take advantage of this, and it's one of the reasons why Lost Box and Mew VMAX have been so dominant. Losing VIP Pass should slow some decks down a little bit, and could force players to run turn 1 consistency cards like Squawkabilly or Bombardier, rather than just relying on one broken card. As for 1-to-1 replacements, there isn't one. You'll just have to run 4 Nest Ball and 4 Ultra Ball with maybe Artisan splashed in to get basics into play early. The other strategy is to be destructive and use Squawkabilly EX to dig deeper into your deck while hoping to successfully get what you need off of Great Ball and Capturing Aroma. Or you could use Master Ball as your Ace Spec once it launches in March, but it's definitely not the best Ace Spec that will be available. In terms of Pokemon-based benching, there's Bombardier EX, which works on turn 1 going first, or Hisuian Basculin and Pidgey that can be good on turn 1 going second. If you've ever lost a game because your opponent used Judge in Path, or Iono in Path, or Roxanne in Path, you know why this is in second place. Shutting off the abilities of all Rulebox Pokemon, Path to the Peak is able to just outright win you the game if your opponent doesn't have a Counter Stadium or Lost Vacuum. Personally, I don't know if I'm excited for Path to rotate. It'll be nice to just play any deck without having to worry about losing abilities, but on the other foot, everyone else is going to be running wild with abilities too. While I was unequivocally excited for Chaotic Swell to rotate a few years ago because it effectively removed a part of the TCG, Path to the Peak at the very least leveled the playing field for certain decks. Replacing something as powerful as Path to the Peak is impossible. A good ability blocking Pokemon for 2024 will be Klefki, which stops all basic Pokemon from having an ability, provided Klefki is in the active. You could also use the Spiritomb that shuts off basic Pokemon via abilities, as cards like Lumineon and Rotom will still remain standard legal until early 2025. Or maybe Ting Lu EX makes a comeback, though as a reminder it doesn't shut off other EXs. And if you're thinking the upcoming Fluttermane is good, keep in mind that it only blocks your opponent's active Pokemon's ability, so it's likely just a worse Klefki. At number 3, it isn't Mew VMAX, it's all the Fusion Strike cards. Rather than going through these guys one by one, I figured I'd celebrate their banishment from Standard all at once. When Standard rotation hits, Mew V, Mew VMAX, Genesect V, Meloetta, Fusion Strike Energy, Power Tablet, and Elisa's Sparkle will all leave the format forever. Unlike the first 2 cards in this video that represent major losses for decks but don't remove entire decks, the deck that seemingly won every major tournament, despite the Pokemon Company printing numerous cards to counter it, will be no more. Oh, and Cram-O-Matic is also leaving. I know it's not a Fusion Strike card per se, but let's be honest, nobody else was using Cram-O-Matic. Because this is an entire archetype we're losing, there is no replacement. So to all of you Mew VMAX players out there, you only have 3 months left of drawing your entire deck on turn 1. After that, you have to play inconsistent decks like the rest of us. Item-based switch cards have made both Lost Box and Iron Valiant scarier than your mom's feet when I haven't been over in a few weeks to lotion them. But when rotation hits, we'll be losing a great one, Escape Rope. Forcing your opponent to switch their active while also switching your own, Escape Rope has been responsible for far too many turn 1 Cramorant KOs on low HP basics that I thought were safe on the bench, but then they hit me with the stupid Escape Rope. Unless we get a new switch card with Temporal Forces, it'll essentially just be down to switch and switch card, and switch card only works on basics. It's also worth noting that Beach Court still exists, so while the loss of Escape Rope will hurt a deck like Lost Box, they can easily just swap out Path to the Peach with Beach Court and Escape Rope with Pokegear and still dominate Standard. To a lesser extent, we're also losing Cross Switcher. Comboed with Pokestop, Baxcalibur decks have enjoyed its usefulness. The one saving grace comes in the form of Prime Catcher and Temporal Forces at the end of March. An item-based Guzma, this Ace-Spec switches in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active while also forcing you to do the same. If we indeed don't get a truly new switch card in Temporal Forces though, expect Snorlax Block to become even more powerful than you could possibly imagine. While Gardevoir EX will continue to be a good deck in 2024, it's losing arguably its best attacker, Gardevoir from Chilling Reign. The Shining Arcana Gardevoir provided the deck a single prize attacker that could deal massive damage, as Reversal Energy could provide an extra 90 damage out of nowhere. But the losses don't stop there. We've also seen one copy of Mirage Step Kirlia thrown into Gardevoir more often these days. That's also leaving. The good news for Gardevoir is that Refinement Kirlia isn't going anywhere, so you can still jam 4 copies of that into the deck and draw like crazy. So while the power of Gardevoir EX's ability isn't going anywhere, the Pokemon surrounding it are. At least for right now, prepare to use Drifloon and Screamtail, comboed with either Bravery Charm or Luxurious Cape to take big knockouts with Gardevoir post-rotation. Obviously, we'll get more and more Psychic types as 2024 progresses, but at least for the first few months, it could be tough for Gardevoir. Far more useful than Netball ever was, Fog Crystal allows you to get either a basic Psychic Pokemon or a basic Psychic Energy and put it into your hand. This was great in Shadow Rider VMAX, then became super useful in Gardevoir EX. This loss is another unfortunate blow to Gardevoir decks everywhere, as well as pretty much every other Psychic deck. In order to mimic a fraction of Fog Crystal's power, you'll have to play Nest Ball and Earthen Vessel, which honestly isn't too bad. And at the very least, it does make it slightly more difficult for Lost Box decks to easily recycle Sableye and Psychic Energy, so there's that. Because I'm efficient, not because I'm lazy, I'll be grouping together all of the Rapid Strike cards we're losing in March. This means Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, Octillery, Medicham V, Rapid Strike Energy, Tower of Waters, and Inteleon VMAX are all leaving Standard. But worst of all, we're no longer going to get horny together, as Echoing Horn is also abandoning us like Damien abandoned Charmander. The Inteleon Urshifu deck has seen a huge resurgence of late, and Medicham V has been a great partner for Iron Valiant, taking cheeky knockouts and giving you an extra turn. If you want a replacement for the damage spreading ability of Inteleon VMAX, Meowstarada EX is a choice, but I think Iron Valiant EX with the upcoming Iron Crown EX, which has an attack that goes through Manaphy, will be the more popular option. If it worked for Rapid Strike, I may as well do it for Single Strike. While Single Strike cards have definitely fallen off in recent months, there was a time when Single Strike Urshifu VMAX and Gengar VMAX struck fear into the feet of many. Lately though, it's been Tyranitar V that put in a lot of work for Lugia V-Star, offering a powerful Dark-type attacker. I know I'm always right about everything, but if you disagree with me putting Single Strike cards at number 8, you totally shouldn't leave a comment and help boost this video in the algorithm. I would hate that so much. For the penultimate spot in my top 10 video, we have Level Ball. And I may as well throw in Rescue Carrier too, I guess. Between Battle VIP Pass, Fog Crystal, and Level Ball, we're losing a surprising amount of Pokemon search cards in March. So I hope you're excited to rely on Capturing Aroma and Mesa Goza in 2024. A card that helped lower HP decks immensely, and also Gardevoir to find those Kirlia, Level Ball allowed you to go and get any 90 hit point or less Pokemon from your deck. Now you're stuck relying on Nest Ball for your basics and Ultra Ball for everybody else in terms of consistent ball search. For inconsistent ball search, don't forget that Great Ball and Pokeball exist, though both will fail you when you need them the most. To a lesser extent, we're also losing Rescue Carrier. This allowed you to get any 2 Pokemon with 90 hit points or less from your discard pile. It was great for something like Wug Trio, but not used in too many other decks. And since we have Super Rod, the loss is somewhat mitigated. And finally, the 10th most goodest card leaving with rotation is, of course, Flaffy. Helping to make Lightning decks even better, the Sheep allowed you to accelerate energy from your discard pile to a bench Pokemon. With that gone, it should hurt the late game power of Raikou, Miraidon, Iron Hands. But the early game power is still going to be there. While we're also losing Peony, which has been a fun addition to go and get 2 electric generators for a turn 1 Iron Hands, Temporal Forces is bringing Nymphomaniac's Deciphering. Mallow with a different name, this supporter allows you to put any 2 cards on top of your deck in any order. Have an electric generator in hand, put 2 lightning energy on top, and guarantee 2 energy in play. Need Prime Catcher and an electric generator for game? Play Hypochondriac, then use Radiant Greninja to draw the 2 cards. As for specific replacements for Flaffy, there isn't one. It's just a consistent guaranteed attachment. Going forward, you'll have to rely on Electric Generator as well as cards like Experience Share and Energy Sticker, though they're less than ideal. While not nearly as noteworthy as the top 10, there's plenty of cards rotating in March worth mentioning rapid-firely, starting with V-Unions. Ah, V-Unions. The Pokemon Company finally got around to watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And decided they wanted to create Exodia, except they made the cards not as good as you want and too much of a headache to get into play. We only ever received 5, and the only one to regularly see play was Mewtwo V-Union thanks to Gardevoir EX. While it may not be the end of VMAXs and 3-prize Pokemon as we know it in Standard, the final year of Sword and Shield focused more on V-Stars, which means there's only going to be a handful of VMAXs remaining through 2024. The biggest losses will be Shadow Rider and Ice Rider Calyrex, Flying Pikachu, and Duraludon. Looking at the regular V Pokemon, Suicune rotates while Entei and Raikou don't. I'm sorry, why is Suicune being singled out? I don't see Hentai or Raikou on the box art for a video game. Anyways, joining Suicune are the Galarian Birds, Blissey, Crabominable, and Dragonite. Then we have the single prize basic Pokemon. While the Reggie deck will still be viable post-rotation, losing Terraspark Regieleki won't be fun. Lost Box decks will hate to lose Celebration's Kyogre, and Celebration's Mew leaving means it will be slightly more difficult for Stage 2 decks to find rare candy. In terms of single prize evolution Pokemon, we're pretty much just losing the Zoroark deck, as well as the Cherrim that accelerates Grass Energy into play. Now the trainers. A lot of good supporters are leaving in March 2024, like more than I thought. They'll all have an impact on the format in one way or another, but the losses of Melanie, Cheryl, even though she never shows up for work, Raihan, and Avery will be the most noticeable. And finally, we're losing the Gloves, Energy Recycler, and Spirit Mass, though obviously Energy Recycler will be missed the most. If you skip to the end of the video, here's a quick recap for you. I'm amazing, and at the end of March, all Pokemon cards with an E in the bottom left corner will rotate out of Standard. Of those, the biggest cards we're losing are Battle VIP Pass, Path to the Peak, Mew VMAX, and all the Fusion Strike cards, Escape Rope, Gardevoir, and more. If your fingers aren't too slippery due to excess lotion, use your keyboard to let everyone know in the comments which card you're going to miss the most when it rotates.